frustrated and angry with the pace of his assault on Ukraine. The worry for Washington, is he acting rationally, and will he ramp up the violence against Ukraine's citizens? There is no new intelligence on his mental state, but U.S. officials say everyone, including President Biden, sees an angrier Putin, increasingly detached from reality in his speeches, isolated from longtime advisors, rarely coming into the Kremlin, and when he does, meeting on opposite ends of a supersized table, more than 20 feet apart.
That, I think, creates this kind of delusional bubble about what he thought was going to happen when he first launched this attack.
Officials tell NBC News Putin has lashed out at underlings in private and in public bullied his top spy on state TV. Say it directly, he said. What do you think is going on there?
I don't know what is the matter there, but whatever it is, the people of Ukraine are paying the price for it.
Now he's raising the stakes for U.S. military planners by putting Russia's nuclear forces on heightened alert.
You don't want a madman backed into a corner with nothing to lose, especially if that madman has nuclear weapons.
With the Russian economy collapsing under the weight of global sanctions, and some of his own oligarchs even criticizing the invasion, what might he do to stay in power?
He can threaten or carry out cyber attacks against the West, including the United States, and he can threaten to use battlefield nuclear weapons.
U.S. officials say President Biden is deliberately downplaying Putin's nuclear threats and not raising the alert status of U.S. nuclear weapons, trying to de-escalate a crisis with an unpredictable enemy.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.